Alright, if you haven't seen my latest videos covering all the scaling up to this point, then some of the things going forward may not make as much sense, so go check them out, but otherwise we're gonna jump right into it. Now if you remember last time, of course, that we were covering Deidara versus Sasuke, we covered the C0 and that amazing feat, but now we've finally gotten up to Jiraiya. So it takes a while, but we eventually get to see Jiraiya in Sage Mode using his ultimate Rasengan and eventually killing 3 pain bodies with the help of Ma and Pa using their genjutsu. We also, however, see that he loses an entire arm from something not even close to the force of a normal Rasengan, let alone something like his own ultimate Rasengan. Only bringing this up because while we haven't hit too hard on it at all, it's time to bring durability into the conversation here, and we constantly see that characters dish out more than they can take. But this can be addressed as we go, okay? Because now we're gonna move on. Let's get to Sasuke versus Itachi, because this is a massive fight with many feats. Starting off, however, we get Sasuke getting nearly taken out by a feat showing no more than wall level total force. Like, what is the... Okay, we know it's genjutsu, right? See, that punch after that was even weaker than that. So again, thank God this is genjutsu, because this was some of the weakest of showings. But look, the reason I'm showing this part is just please never use something that doesn't actually happen from the character physically as a means to try and scale them in some potential case, in either a low ball or a high ball, either way. But so moving on to actual feats worth calcing, let's look at Sasuke's Dragon Fire. At this point, Sasuke had been fighting Itachi for a little bit, and the roof of the hideout is being blown apart by these things. In total, we see a volume of around this many cubic centimeters of matter being explosively fragmented, showing a total joules of this amount here, or we're talking higher in building level. So it's whatever. When we look at the volume of the attack of around this amount here, we find the AP to be approximately only like 32 joules per centimeter cubed, or, I mean, yeah, it's extremely low, in lieu of simply destroying about as much as the size it was. I mean, to be fair, listen, it could have only about 20 joules per centimeter cubed, which is the general metric for explosive fragmentation, for example, and that'd be almost enough for the feat to have taken place, okay? It just doesn't show great AP. But even if it doesn't show that great potency, let's talk about its speed. These things travel to clouds from the top of the mountain in easily less than a second, but in an unknown time otherwise. When we look at the mountain, we can find that its height is around 544 plus meters based on the stone slab that Sasuke stands on and using the very straight shot that actually has a great angle. That's perfect. As for it being at least the 544 meters, this means it's above the minimum height for cumulonimbus clouds. These clouds, making a minimum for the speed calc somewhat impossible, as it traveling to the cloud, we don't know what the minimum cloud height would be, right? We can get an idea for the highest end, however, at Mach 10 plus. However, when we look at the pictures, we can see the cloud is not much higher than any of the surrounding mountains, with the shot even making it look like the Amaterasu is close to it, which would be insane. If we did have to use a minimum, it could be as low as around this Mach number here, using these pics of it being so close. However, believe it or not, neither the low or high end that I just showed is worth using. This was just all the work I was putting into it. See, this feat is actually directly linked to the Kirin feat. Yes, directly, and I don't mean in making the clouds, I mean in speed. See, these fireballs were at least relative to Sasuke's own and Itachi's speed, putting them in scaling at approximately Mach 6, making them easily dodgeable from a distance as shown. Given this would put the clouds at least 2,058 meters above where they were, meaning from the actual ground and not the top of the mountain, Kirin's cloud formed around 2,602 meters above ground. This is extremely important for the upcoming Kirin feat. In case you missed it, this means the Dragon Fire scales best to just under Mach 6. But like I said, this was all just a setup for the Kirin feat, and that means once again we need to factor in the mountain. But this time, the whole thing is destroyed, so now we need the mountain's volume. Luckily, again, we're working with a great scan. First, let's acknowledge that this mountain is multi-layered and not a single solid slope, okay? This means we need to account for each section, and in doing so we find a volume for the entire mountain to be around this many cubic centimeters. It's that large, and Kirin absolutely destroys it, where we see more explosive fragmentation, putting the total joules as high as this many joules, or lower end small city level. Not bad. The AP shown, however, like actually shown, not much. It's yet another feat where the size of destruction comes from the AoE size of the attack. That said, like always, feats like these benefit greatly once we find a feat that does actually show great AP that they scale above. Just, Naruto, please. A feat where it's not, where there's great destruction that wasn't because it was so large. Please. Anyways, in terms of scaling above things, for example, this Kirin here should scale above Naruto's Odama Rasengan, right? And we could factor in like what its AP should be. Perhaps even scales above the Rasen Shuriken, for example, right? But let's look at speed. Well, its speed is honestly equal to unknown. Speed of lightning, speed of Zetsu's statement, speed of a dragon, because it's not just lightning. Hey, if it's the speed of lightning because it's lightning, then it's the speed of dragon because it's a right? Stop. Anyways, the speed, is it the speed of Sasuke's jutsu ability, his manipulation, or what is it? Speed based on heat involved in making of the cloud. If it wasn't for Amaterasu, would the cloud have been weaker, and thus Kirin would have been weaker, and so it would have been slower, right? So, all of that is just, it's actually unknown. Anybody making a positive truth value claim here? No. Except, if we use the Dragon Fireball speed for cloud distance given low balls, we can then, that's how I said it was directly linked, we can expect Kirin to have traveled from the cloud to Itachi in a time such that Itachi couldn't simply dodge like he did with the Fireball. And that's huge. This gives us a minimum. This is a matter of Itachi can dodge versus can only react / process the attack at all, and from a much further distance, which is huge. I mean, the distance matters a lot, meaning Kirin had to have struck the mountain with such speeds that compared to his reaction speed shown to the fireballs where he actively dodged, Kirin's speed shows at least Mach 379 plus. The difference in distance cannot be stressed enough. It really mattered here. So not bad, that is by far the fastest feat we've come across. With all that said, I am aware that Sasuke has a feat of not being on the stone slab anymore by the time the Kirin itself actually comes down and hits a mountain. That's really incredible. We just said that it was coming out to like Mach 379 plus. Sasuke must be Mach 379 plus, oh my gosh. I know, I've seen that logic too much, but alright. I've seen people say that because he isn't visible in the panel with the Kirin destroying the mountain, he outsped the Kirin and got off the mountain. Well, at least one part of that is correct. He did outspeed Kirin in some sense. If you know, like, if you're actually talking about him moving before Kirin struck the mountain, but he didn't move far. What do you mean he moved off the mountain? Okay, we don't know in what way he exactly moved, because we can't see him, but it makes no sense he'd be on the mountain during the Kirin, like actually destroying it. And of course that's one of the reasons people say he got off the mountain, but it makes far more sense that he simply leaked from the slab he was on and we can't see him in the faraway shot. And that is just what, like a single pixel or something, or even less, okay? Or he's simply behind the slab, since he could direct it and we see it verbatim not hit the slab at all, like not even a little bit. But look, he is next seen only next to Itachi, like very close to Itachi. The guy he was already next to, right? Look at these scans. Look at the distance between Sasuke and Itachi. We don't see Sasuke, he got all the way off the mountain, or we just can't see him in the faraway shot. Now he's still next to Itachi. He's still just next to Itachi. Calm down, okay? So how fast is this for Sasuke then? If we assume he moved the entire distance of the stone slab before Kirin struck, which, to be clear, again, he could have moved far less. Then we'd expect a speed of around Mach 6 plus at most, absolutely at most, for him to clear the slab's distance in the same time Kirin cleared from the cloud to, the actual ground. That's the other, listen, Sasuke doesn't scale to Mach 379 plus. That thing had to cover a far bigger distance than what Sasuke had to. It drives me insane that people don't factor in the distance of things. I can beat a car in a race going 100 miles an hour with my running speed if I start off only a meter away from the finish line, right? Sasuke's so much, he doesn't have to cover nearly the same distance as what Kirin did. Alright. Sorry. This is just not the feat some make it out to be. Even moving the slab's distance instead of just ducking behind it is an assumption, and the only way to make this extremely impressive is to make an extreme and totally unbacked by any panel assumption again, as Sasuke got off the entire mountain before it struck down, and then was also next to Itachi in the panels we see it, actually coming down just prior, all based on a single far away shot, no close-up ones, where we can't even visually make out Sasuke to have known where he is. Off the mountain, behind the slab, jumping, so that's the problem. Now, some last tidbits involving what's been covered in regards to the speed of the feat actually shown, okay? Here they are. All the scans showing the cloud being far closer has meaning, far closer. Because look, if the cloud is in fact only several hundreds of meters above the mountain instead, this would impact the feats heavily, as the distance needed to travel before hitting would be much less. This would mean the fireball speed is much lower, traveling to clouds that are much closer in the same time frame, which would mean its scaling versus Itachi's reactions compared to Kirin would mean Kirin wouldn't need to be nearly as fast either for him to not be able to dodge, right? But that's again trying to get speed based on its travel to the clouds. Instead, once more, we can scale its speed, the fireball to near Mach 6 based on its own feat tagging Itachi, albeit he was slower than usual and generally was able to dodge it. He was also stronger than Sasuke as a whole, so very relative to them both. Regardless, if the clouds are much closer in this regard, it's actually a buff, and would mean Itachi would have shown reaction speeds on par of Mach 1.26 plus from a meter's distance, aka Mach 379 plus from 300 meters distance, instead of what would be a far weaker showing of reaction speed if we're talking about the clouds being far away, which is actually what's more consistent. The Mach 1.26 per meter's distance is not his actual speed. Instead, his actual reaction speed that is shown more in contrast with what we see with the clouds again being far away, which is what got the speed up in the first place, is more around this number here. And yeah, a very impressive showing in total, but sadly this brings us now to the point in Naruto where feats just plummet in terms of power. And I don't know why, but it is the case. It's consistent, there's many examples and feats. Why they become so weak, I don't know, but let's cover them. Next up, we're jumping all the way to Team Taka versus B, where we see Jugo cause this crater here. Note where everyone is in the close-up and compare it to the lineup of people in the back of the panel. Using Jugo himself, we can find that the crater's total volume should be around this many cubic centimeters, and with cratering, shows this many total joules, or we're talking city block level. But when you factor in his transformed hands for AP, we find that he's showing but this many joules per centimeter cubed, or only on the highest end of wall level plus. So close to small building level joules per centimeter cubed, it may as well be, but that's still pretty weak. It doesn't help, however, that Jugo had once already struck this place and could be making the far away shot we have to use for this calc incorrectly too large. But still. And this leads us to the next feat, where B easily destroys the entire plateau they were on, with a volume of this many cubic centimeters already factoring in Jugo's crater, as in what I'm showing here is already with the total volume subtracting Jugo's crater, okay? And when we're using explosive fragmentation as the degree of destruction, we find the feat shows around this many total joules, or city block level. I know he destroyed way more. What happened? Yeah, explosive fragmentation, as what B did, is much lower than cratering, which Jugo clearly did. That said, it also destroyed more than that platform. I cannot stress this enough. If you see and follow up with the feat, we can verbatim see that the house all the way up those stairs gets destroyed, and it's not simply from some rock flying into it and also disappearing, right? Where's the rock then? We see clear fracturing all along the ground of it. This indicates fracturing throughout the entire larger plateau up to the house, and we can expect total joules of at least this many joules added to this feat, showing in the fracturing. This puts the entire feat's total joules to at least this many total joules, or we're talking low-end multi-city block level. For the AP, if we assume it was via his entire body, then we'd find AP of this many joules per centimeter cubed, or only high-end wall level. However, if instead it was from a single punch, which actually is less likely given the showing of how he was going at the ground, the AP would actually be as much as this many joules per centimeter cubed, or low-end building level. Again, these are quite weak showings. What does this mean then for durability? I told you it was coming up again. See, you have to understand, why is Sasuke nearly one shot on his deathbed, needing healing to survive at all from B's attack here? Why? B hasn't shown any more than wall to building level AP, not total joules, putting Sasuke's durability, which is what AP actually cares about, and what durability actually cares about, right? He's only shown durability under these ranges on a per cubic centimeter basis. I mean, yes, obviously B's AP is higher, don't get me wrong, but once more, only in scaling. These feats are terrible. Sasuke's durability, however, it just hasn't shown to handle much force for what they're dishing out. Just don't get tagged. Use something to defend yourself. I need Susanoo to protect myself from any and every given thing that might hit me, because if I'm hit, my durability just isn't that good, is honestly what the series kind of shows. Anyway, let's finally look at what should have been a great feat. 8 Tails Biju Bomb. Now, I know this would be a feat that could be strong, and it should be. It is strong, okay? The feat isn't, I suppose, but the attack is. But to save time, let's address the obvious. How much was actually destroyed? We don't know. You can't answer that. And especially, to what degree was it destroyed? We don't know. If you want to say there is evidence of vaporization, then with what? With the fumes there, and you want to call that vapor? You need to address why it's literally behind him instead of in front of. And the other one up there, like, isn't even remotely close. Like, if you can see the one I'm talking about, you got the fumes that are next to 8 Tails, and you got the fumes that are like way away, and it can't be in the two. It just is not the case that those fumes are vapor from his Biju Bomb, okay? And so, after you address that, then the most damaging evidence against it is, I mean, just look at the water right in front of him. If there was any vapor, that's where it should be. No vapor, like no vapor, that's where it should all be. There will be far better Biju Bomb feats to use later, and this one is a pain in the ass. It's just not worth all the guessing to make it work as a low ball. It scales above everything else regarding B, but besides that, consider this feat a complete unknown from me, and look forward to the later ones. Instead, let's look now to one of the most inconsistent jutsus in the series. We're going to start with Amaterasu versus B. Compare Amaterasu versus Sasuke from Itachi to Amaterasu versus Transform B from, Sasuke himself, and you'll notice some things. Amaterasu obviously travels. It doesn't just appear. It barely caught Sasuke, and B failed to dodge. This means Amaterasu travels slightly faster than Mach 6, it means Transform B couldn't dodge such speeds, which is just weird. B already showed to be faster than Sasuke, but again, it's just weird. What I chalk it up to is that Sasuke, now with his own Mangekyo Sharingan, he may have speeds faster than what Itachi showed with his own Amaterasu. I don't know, perhaps time will tell. As for damage, or potency or anything, it's hard to tell because all the screaming and such was more so just theatrics to trick them. He had escaped long escaped into the part of the cut tentacle before Kirin was even hit. It seems obvious that if it just stayed on him, he'd eventually die, but the level of pain and speed of death aren't shown, as he himself, again, wasn't actually a part of the Amaterasu hitting him for more than a moment. But Zelius, it was still hurting the 8-tail, so its potency is higher than his durability, right? Yes, that's very true, but, can you explain Amaterasu versus Kirin? See, Kirin is hit by B's Biju tentacle with Amaterasu on it, knocking her out from the hit, not Amaterasu, where it sits on her back for a decent while before Sasuke finally puts it out. It does seemingly no damage to her. Why? Her durability was such that just an accidental tentacle knocked her out, so her durability is lower than B's, and yet Amaterasu did practically nothing to her. I mean, do you see the problem? Because it's a scaling problem. Next. Naruto trains to be in Sage mode, and when he falls this amount here, he fully expects to be hurt, going as far to react with an ouch. This is supposed to be a feat showing a durability increase, in the form of not being injured by this many total joules in a fall, or very low-end wall-level feat at best, assuming the top where he fell was at least 100 meters even. It falls into street level as you assume even lower, the height. This is a terrible feat. I mean, they're everywhere for multiple characters in a consistent manner. Next, we see this pain destroying multiple buildings where we clearly see the explosions and the size of the rockets. When calculating them, each explosion is only around wall level in actual potency, or again, joules per centimeter cubed. It's here we see instead an explosion is easily reaching building to large building joules per centimeter cubed at this point. Once more, extremely weak and yet extremely consistent. Next, and finally, we get to some Kakashi scaling. All these feats I'm covering right here are in order, by the way, across multiple chapters, with multiple different characters. With Kakashi scaling, he is facing the strongest of the paths with the strongest of the bodies, because each body scales different. A lot different, okay? Kakashi is relative to God Path of Pain 1v1 as long as he's using only his weak attacks, but seems to be capable of having the upper hand in the 1v1 if not for being attacked by another path and having to divide his focus and attacks. We see he also can create lightning clones at a level where the pains are both tricked, but we also know God Path is far from going all out. We do get to see a very tiny Shinra Tensei that blows them all back, but besides the force to violently fragment a building across a large AoE, not much in the way of AP to cover. But at this point, Kakashi states to have half his chakra left, which, I mean, I guess that means he's 50% slower, 50% less AP, 50% less durable too, right? Okay, I mean, yeah, again, you know, I've hit this point. The idea that chakra is a 1-to-1 ratio to stats is still just so stupid to me, but he's at 50% chakra, okay? Anyway, we continue to see that Kakashi is using the help of Choji and now Choza, and still they fail with God Path using one person of his own. They cannot take him out. Still, this absolutely showed Pain couldn't fight them all with just his one body using his minor attacks only. He has to have gone like all out more so, and had to have used his higher tier attacks, which would have extended the time he couldn't attack significantly. The evidence speaks, and Kakashi clearly scales below God Path 1v1 and reminds me of his fight versus Kakuzu. See, consider that with his stronger Shinra Tensei, he was able to nearly take them all out, and it's easy to make the case that God Path scales above Kakuzu. And with his Konoha wiping Shinra Tensei, he absolutely does in power. He dominates Kakuzu in power. But it goes to show that he would be extremely relative to God Path. And so I'll be slowly building my Akatsuki tier list again. Have to understand again, Kakuzu, with his multiple lives, different jutsus, and his speed, it's just weird that he takes 5 seconds in between even just his weak attacks. With his ability to perhaps survive and his earth jutsu to make it so that he's more durable, I do currently believe that Kakuzu is very relative to non-Chibaku Tensei, non-Shinra Tensei on the Konoha wiping level, God Path, Pain. So again, I'll be slowly building that Akatsuki tier list. Lastly, we see that Kakashi had to Kamui a single nail, as it would have been enough to kill him with Pain's force added to it. That's what kills me when people bring up durability in Naruto. We're back at it again. If you're behind Gaara Sand, Susanoo, or something that isn't you, that's fine, but that's not the character's durability then. Kakashi would in fact have died to only the kinetic energy of around this many joules, or mid-end street level total joules at best. Now, that said, the nail is also so tiny that it would in fact also mean the AP is around that same level, but we're talking about that amount of joules there is such an insanely small amount to be killed by that nail. Like, look, I couldn't possibly imagine this feat, and I couldn't possibly imagine someone in Bleach, Yu Yu Hakusho, Hitman Reborn, Seven Deadly Sins, etc. needing to dodge such a weak thing or die. Hell, you put this feat in Baki and they don't die. Like, this would explain why this weak bomb was a potential life-ending threat to Choji despite being wall-level AP. But it just doesn't make sense. It's like, their durability showings are trash at this point. And it kills me because it doesn't make sense, because it shouldn't be scaling this way, but it's so consistent across multiple feats and multiple characters for so many chapters, it can't be ignored. But, again, I've already just touched on it, but the absolute worst of all is when you factor in those 5 seconds for Pain. 5 full entire seconds passing between each and every use of even his minor pushes or pulls, the smallest ones. I'm over here talking about Mach 6 and whatnot, but hell, with 5 seconds and the distance they're working with, them not reaching him makes them show lower than like Mach 0.1 movement. Like, it's insane. What happened? This isn't like a standout lowballing anymore. This is far too consistent. Man, it just kills me. Anyway, that's probably gonna wrap this up. My next video, I'm going to focus solely on Pain's Shinra Tensei that actually wiped out Konoha, up to his Chibaku Tensei, and, you know, Naruto with his different Tails forms. I'm going to be covering that. I already have them calced and it's more focused, so next video will come out sooner, but man, besides Kirin, everything was weak as hell, with only 8 Tails Biju Bomb being strong, if it had a feat we could actually calc. We just know it's strong through scaling, but like, not in any regard at, you know, what we have to work with right now. So do you see why it's so frustrating though? Like, the inconsistencies? Anyway, look, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, then please like the video and bring up anything you want to discuss in the comments. I'll respond, no problem. If you like the channel, please consider subscribing, where you'll find many other videos that go into great depth with scaling. And with that, I'll see y'all later. Ciao.
Pastor.